I discovered my son wasn't my husband's child, but I'd already put him in the will, so I changed it. The coffee mug slipped from my hands and shattered across the kitchen floor as I stared at the DNA test results. 23 years of marriage, 18 years of raising what I believed was our son together, and everything I knew about my family just crumbled in that single moment. My husband had been having an affair with my sister, and somehow in the chaos of our early marriage, I'd gotten pregnant during a brief separation we'd had. The test results were crystal clear in black and white letters that seemed to mock me from the crumpled paper. My son shared DNA with my husband's brother, not my husband himself. The math was simple and devastating. During our separation, I'd spent one reckless night with his brother after a family gathering where emotions ran high and alcohol flowed freely. That single night of weakness had created the child I'd raised, believing all along he belonged to the man I'd married. My hands shook as I swept up the broken ceramic pieces, each shard reflecting my fractured reality. The irony wasn't lost on me that just 3 months earlier, I'd convinced my husband to update our will to include our son as the primary beneficiary of our substantial estate. We'd worked for decades to build our wealth, investing in real estate and growing our savings through careful planning and sacrifice. The paperwork for the will sat in our home office, officially notarized and legally binding. Our son stood to inherit everything: the house, the investments, the business we'd built together. But now, knowing what I knew, the thought of him receiving what rightfully belonged to my husband's actual bloodline felt like a betrayal I couldn't stomach. Sleep became impossible as I wrestled with the weight of this discovery. I'd wake up at 3 in the morning, staring at the ceiling and replaying every moment of my son's childhood. His laugh that never quite matched my husband's, the way he walked with a different gait, the subtle differences I'd attributed to genetics being unpredictable. All those little details suddenly made perfect sense in the most heartbreaking way. The worst part was how much I loved this child, how proud I'd been watching him grow into a good man. He'd graduated from college, started his own small business, and treated both of us with respect and kindness. None of this was his fault, yet I couldn't shake the feeling that keeping him in the will would be dishonest to my husband. Days turned into weeks as I carried this secret like a lead weight in my chest. My husband noticed my distant behavior, asking repeatedly if something was wrong. I'd force a smile and blame it on work stress or hormones, anything to avoid revealing the truth that would destroy our family. The guilt of lying to him, while simultaneously planning to change our will behind his back, ate at me constantly. I made an appointment with our family attorney, claiming I wanted to review and update certain provisions. The lawyer's office felt cold and sterile as I sat across from his mahogany desk, my palms sweating despite the air conditioning. When I explained my intention to remove our son from the will, the attorney's eyebrows shot up in surprise and concern. He asked probing questions about our family situation, clearly trying to understand what could motivate such a drastic change. I gave vague answers about wanting to redirect our inheritance to charity instead, avoiding the real reason that burned in my throat. The attorney warned me about the legal and emotional implications of such a decision, but I insisted on moving forward. The paperwork took 2 weeks to prepare, and every day felt like an eternity. I'd catch myself staring at family photos on the mantel, wondering if I'd ever be able to look at them the same way again. Our son called regularly, updating us on his life and business ventures, completely unaware that his entire future was being rewritten in legal documents. When the new will was ready for signing, I sat in my car outside the attorney's office for almost an hour, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. This felt like crossing a line I could never uncross, but the alternative felt like living a lie for the rest of my life. I walked into that office and signed every page with a trembling hand. The relief I expected never came. Instead, I felt hollow and numb, like I'd just buried a part of myself. Going home that evening, I looked at my husband reading his newspaper in his favorite chair, completely oblivious to the seismic shift that had just occurred in our family's future. The weight of keeping this secret from both of them felt unbearable. 3 months passed in a haze of sleepless nights and forced normalcy. I'd perfected the art of smiling when my son visited, laughing at his jokes, and pretending everything was fine. But inside, I was dying a little more each day. The new will sat locked in our safe, a constant reminder of the choice I'd made. Then came the phone call that changed everything again. My husband's brother, the one whose DNA matched our son's, had been diagnosed with a terminal illness. He'd been given 6 months to live, and in his final days, he decided to come clean about family secrets he'd been carrying for decades. He asked to meet with me privately, and my stomach dropped as I realized what conversation was coming. We met at a quiet diner on the outskirts of town, where he looked me in the eyes and confessed that he'd always wondered if our son might be his biological child. The night we'd spent together during my separation had haunted him for years, but he'd never had the courage to pursue the truth. What he told me next knocked the wind out of my lungs completely. He'd been secretly helping to support our son's education and business ventures, sending anonymous donations and grants through various organizations. Every scholarship our son had received, every business loan that had been mysteriously approved, every financial break that had seemed like good luck. It had all been his biological father working behind the scenes. The man who'd given our son life had been watching from the shadows, providing for him in ways I'd never known. He'd channeled his love and responsibility into quiet acts of support, never seeking recognition or acknowledgement. Now, facing his own mortality, he wanted to ensure our son would be provided for after he was gone. He'd already designated our son as his sole beneficiary, leaving him a substantial inheritance that would secure his future. The timing was perfect and devastating. Just as I'd removed him from our will, his biological father was ensuring he'd never want for anything. The universe seemed to be correcting my harsh decision in the most unexpected way. I sat in that diner booth, tears streaming down my face as I realized how wrong I'd been. My husband's brother had taken responsibility for his child in the only way he could, while I'd been punishing an innocent young man for circumstances beyond his control. The guilt crashed over me like a tsunami, threatening to drown me in its intensity. Driving home that day, I knew I had to undo what I'd done. The new will had to be changed back, and somehow I had to find the courage to tell my husband the truth. But as I pulled into our driveway, I saw an ambulance parked outside our house, and neighbors gathered on the lawn. My husband had suffered a massive heart attack while working in the garden. The paramedics were loading him into the ambulance as I ran across the lawn, my heart pounding with terror. In that moment, nothing else mattered except getting to the hospital and praying he would survive. The next 48 hours were a blur of hospitals, doctors, and desperate waiting. My husband clung to life in the intensive care unit while I sat beside his bed, holding his hand and whispering apologies for secrets I'd never had the chance to confess. Our son rushed to the hospital, his face pale with worry as he kept vigil alongside me. Watching my son care for the man who'd raised him, seeing the genuine love and concern in his eyes, I realized how foolish I'd been. Blood doesn't make a family, love does. My husband had been this young man's father in every way that mattered, and I'd let my own guilt and anger blind me to that truth. On the third day, my husband's condition stabilized enough for him to speak. His first words were asking about our son, making sure he was okay, and handling the crisis well. Even in his weakened state, his priorities were clear. The family we'd built together mattered more than anything else. I spent the next week making arrangements to change the will back to its original state. The attorney seemed relieved by my decision, though he didn't pry into my reasons for the reversal. I signed the new documents with a clear conscience, knowing I was doing the right thing for everyone involved. My husband recovered slowly but steadily, and during his rehabilitation, I found the courage to tell him everything. The affair I'd had with his brother, the DNA test results, the changes I'd made to our will, all of it came pouring out in a tearful confession that left us both emotionally drained. His reaction surprised me completely. Instead of anger or betrayal, he felt relief that the truth was finally out in the open. He'd always had his suspicions about our son's paternity, but had chosen love over doubt. He decided long ago that being a father meant more than sharing DNA, and nothing I'd revealed changed how he felt about the boy he'd raised. We made the decision together not to tell our son about his true paternity. His biological father had passed away peacefully, leaving behind the inheritance he'd planned. Our son would benefit from both families, without ever knowing the complex truth of his origins. Some secrets, we decided, were better left buried. The whole experience taught me that family isn't defined by genetics or legal documents. It's built through years of shared experiences, unconditional love, and mutual support. I'd almost destroyed something beautiful because I'd let fear and guilt override my heart. Looking back now, I realized that changing the will was never really about money or inheritance. It was about my own inability to forgive myself for a mistake I'd made decades earlier. I'd projected my guilt onto an innocent situation and nearly punished everyone for my own shortcomings. Our son continues to thrive, unaware of the drama that swirled around him. He visits regularly, bringing grandchildren who light up our lives with their laughter and energy. My husband has fully recovered and seems happier than ever, perhaps because honesty has strengthened our marriage in unexpected ways. The will sits safely in our attorney's office, naming our son as the primary beneficiary just as it should be. He's earned that inheritance through years of being a loving, responsible member of our family. DNA tests and biological connections seem insignificant compared to the bonds we've forged through time and dedication. Sometimes, I wonder what would have happened if I'd never discovered the truth, if I'd lived my entire life without knowing about my son's real parentage. Would ignorance have been bliss, or would the truth have found its way to the surface eventually? There's no way to know, but I'm grateful that everything worked out as it did. The crisis forced me to confront my own capacity for both cruelty and forgiveness. I learned that love isn't diminished by complicated circumstances, and that family ties are stronger than biological connections. Most importantly, I discovered that some mistakes can be undone if you're willing to admit them and work toward making things right. My husband and I are growing old together, surrounded by the family we've built and the love we've nurtured. Our son continues to make us proud, and our grandchildren bring joy to our golden years. The secret that once threatened to destroy everything has become just another chapter in our family's complex but beautiful story. In the end, I realized that changing the will back wasn't just about money or legal documents. It was about choosing love over fear, forgiveness over guilt, and family over biological technicalities. Some decisions define who we are as people, and I'm grateful I found the courage to make the right choice before it was too late.